Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. This is Laurie Smith on Blog Talk Radio. It is 9:30 p.m. Calgary, Alberta, Monday night, July the 5th. I'm happy to be here. This is Child Abuse Prevention and Human Rights Abuse Prevention is Up to Us, and it's a 30-minute live internet streaming radio broadcast from blogtalkradio.com. I have the chat room open. You're welcome to sit in there. And, tonight I thought we'd talk about strengthening families. And I found a great article. It's actually a PDF, and it's full of so much good information, really. I believe child abuse prevention, really is ultimately about strengthening families. If we had strong family units, a lot of times child abuse could be avoided and could be prevented completely. So I thought, well, we'll take a look at it because there is lots and lots of good information out there. So we'll be looking at that tonight. And I do have a guest call-in number. I just haven't been taking any guest calls because mostly they're just prank calls. And so if you'd like to contact me ahead of the show and let me know if you'd like to be on the show, then I can go ahead and let you in. And otherwise I just don't take calls because of the prank calls that most of us on Blog Talk Radio have to put up with, right? So I'll just get right on with this. This whole issue regarding child abuse, I'm not a professional counselor or therapist or anything like that. I'm just a person who fights for child rights. I stand up, advocate against child abuse, ultimately to save children's lives. This is what I do. I'm the Canada Regional Director for Dreamcatchers for Abused Children, and happy to be, let me tell you, volunteer position, which I love doing, and I love having the ability to do it. Just to raise awareness, promote awareness, education, and prevention of child abuse, right? And everything to do with really human rights abuses. Child abuse is a human rights abuse, and children have rights. And abuse of all kinds really needs to stop. You look around at what's going on in the world around us. It doesn't take much. You look in the newspaper, take a look on the news, listen to a radio broadcast somewhere, and it's there. It's in our face, right? And how are we going to fix this? How are we going to, as a society and as a world population, going to make these changes that are so necessary, right? And especially for children. Children don't have a voice, right? And children don't have any protection unless someone stands up to protect them. So that's the whole issue, right? It's so important that we all get involved, no matter what way. It all matters, it all counts, and it all does help make a difference, in the whole grand scale, to help stop and prevent child abuse, right? So I'm just so happy to be here, and I'm glad that you can join me. This article that I found, it's from childwelfare.gov, so www.childwelfare.gov and /PUBS, pubs, /res, R-E-S, _guide, G-U-I-D-E, _2010, and then /guide.pdf, and it's called Strengthening Families and Communities. And I took a look through there. It's 86 pages long, so obviously we will not be able to cover the whole thing. But I really like this PDF download here, this guide. It's very current. It's from 2010, so it's from this year. And they talk about protective factors for strengthening families, promote safe, stable, and nurturing relationships, levers for change, using evidence to support efforts to strengthen families. Then they go on to talk about working with families, the 5 protective factors, promoting the 5 protective factors, nurturing and attachment, knowledge of parenting and of child and youth development, parental resilience, social connections, concrete support for parents, which is just so crucial and so vital, right? To stop child abuse, really, we have to get these parents some help. If you could get the parents some help before they abuse their children, then there would be no abuse, obviously, regarding child abuse. It is the abuser's choice to abuse. For whatever reasons they are abusing their children, they are doing it. And if we could get these parents some help before it actually happens, that would be the best case scenario. Keep the whole family together, everybody's happy. But obviously that's not happening, but it could and eventually will. Then they go on to talk about engaging your community, tools for engaging your community, engaging community partners, tips for working with specific groups, talking points, and then they have some stuff in Spanish as well. Part of that publication is in Spanish. Chapter 4, Protecting Children, Understanding Child Abuse and Neglect, and Reporting Child Maltreatment. Chapter 5, Resources, National Child Abuse Prevention Partners, and Federal Interagency Work Group on Child Abuse and Neglect. So this is from www.childwelfare.gov, and that's a great website. If anybody hasn't taken a look at it, there's lots and lots of great information on there regarding everything to do with child abuse and child abuse prevention. So we'll just take a look at that, and I'll just bring in this whole thing up here. So this is so important that we just learn how to strengthen families and how to build these relationships. We've been talking a lot about that, the whole group of Dreamcatchers for Abused Children and everyone involved, because we are rolling out programs very soon that will involve family-to-family, peer-to-peer, setting and relationship courses and a setting where people can get together and talk about, how they can strengthen their families and what worked for them, and just to sort of be a support system, right, for families out there who are having problems, and whatever they may be, substance abuse, maybe some mental illness, health issues, economic factors, coming into play there quite often, right? The economy, people losing their jobs, and the stress levels are just so high. How do you cope? How do parents cope, right? And that's the whole issue, right? There are ways to cope, and it's just very important that parents know that there is support out there, there is help out there, and if you haven't found it, you just need to keep looking, because there is help out there, and there's just too much help. It's everywhere. I look at it all day long. Now, some of it might not be accessible, depending on whether you have insurance or, whether or not you qualify. There's all this red tape, obviously, but there's free online groups that actually provide support for parents. It's absolutely free, and you can contact people that can help you if you're having problems and you think, oh, I don't want to hurt my child, but I'm so stressed out. How do I deal with this? How do I cope? Or I have a substance abuse. What am I going to do? There's people out there, and believe it or not, if you take a look around, tons and tons of people who are willing to help and just to be a support system, right? And it's free. It doesn't cost anything. Make a phone call, get online. Make sure stop in at a local community a place where they actually for families, like family services and whatnot, and get some help, right? It's so important. And it says, what's inside? The resource guide was created primarily to support community-based child abuse prevention professionals who work to strengthen communities and support parents, caregivers, and their children. However, others such as policymakers, parent educators, family support workers, healthcare providers, program administrators, teachers, child care providers, mentors, and clergy also will find the resources useful. And they go on to talk about all the different chapters there and whatnot at the very beginning of the workbook. And they talk about on their website, on the web, the Child Welfare Information Gateway website provides links to resources and information about child abuse prevention, family strengthening, family-centered practice, family support, family preservation services, and many related topics. It says, throughout the resource guide, links to related information Gateway web pages will provide you with a wealth of additional information at www.childwelfare.gov. And it says this resource guide can be ordered or downloaded from the Preventing Child Abuse and Neglect section of the Child Welfare Information Gateway website. It's also available on the website, and there's an activity calendar, a short video, downloadable logos and graphics that may be used to customize Child Abuse Prevention Month resources for local communities. So it's a great workbook. It's not a workbook, but it's a great fact book and a guide, right? So, and it's like I said, it's 86 pages long, so we will not be able to cover it all tonight. But just taking a look at protective factors for strengthening families, because I believe that if families could, if we could get at the root of the problems in the family, whether it's a substance abuse issue, whether it's mental health, like I said, some sort of a mental health issue, or someone who has anger management problems, someone who's maybe drinking alcohol or doing drugs like substance abuse, like I said before, these types of issues, if we could help the parents, we could save the children. Not always, because some abusers just do what they do, because it's obviously something that's so mentally wrong that they wouldn't be able to stop themselves. But there's lots of struggling parents who end up abusing their children that probably wouldn't had they gotten some help. And I say, by strengthening families, I mean, we could really, solve a lot of that problem, for children regarding child abuse, if the families had a way to cope and some help, right? So protective factors are conditions in families and communities that, when present, increase the health and well-being of children and families. They are attributes that serve as buffers, helping parents who might otherwise be at risk of abusing their children to find resources, supports, or coping strategies that allow them to parent effectively, even under stress. Now, my parents could have used this. My parents were very abusive, and very abusive towards each other, and as well as us, all of us 7 siblings. And so, had my parents got some support and learned how to cope and learned how to deal with their own survivor issues, as they were both abused themselves, and learned to get some help for their mental issues and their problems, and some marital work, had some marital counseling, marriage counseling. Our lives would have been completely different. I do believe that. And a lot of the reason why they did what they did was just an overload of stress and no support. And they didn't know to reach out for support. They were from small farming communities that were born in the 1920s. They were both abused and not looked after well. And, it was just a recipe for disaster for those two. And they created a family full of it was just one big destruction, you know what I mean? Just a devastation of a family. So we know this can happen even in today's society with, people being born, younger generations and whatnot. It's still going on. And so that's why it's so important that we address the issues regarding what's happening with families out there, what's happening to people, what's happening to this broken society that we live in today, and stop ignoring it and stop turning it off and not reading the articles and not paying attention and actually do something about it. We're trying to save children's lives here, and we're trying to save children from a lifetime of trying to deal with these issues as adult survivors, right? It says, for years, researchers have been studying both the risk factors common among families experiencing abuse and neglect and those factors that protect families who are under stress. There is growing interest in understanding the complex ways in which these risk and protective factors interact within the context of a child's family, community, and society to affect both the incidence and consequences of abuse and neglect. It says, why focus on promoting protective factors? Research has found that successful interventions must both reduce risk factors and promote protective factors to ensure the well-being of children and families. Focusing on promoting protective factors is a more productive approach than reducing risk factors alone, because protective factors are positive attributes that strengthen all families. A universal approach helps get needed support to families that may not meet the criteria for at-risk services, and this happens, right? But who are dealing with stressors that could lead them to abuse or neglect. And focusing on protective factors, which are attributes that families themselves often want to build, help service providers develop positive relationships with parents. Parents then feel more comfortable seeking out extra support if needed, and this positive relationship is especially critical for parents who may be reluctant to disclose concerns or identify behaviors or circumstances that may place their families at risk. And when service providers work with families to increase protective factors, they also help families build and draw on natural support networks within their family and community, and these networks are critical to families' long-term success. So this is just so important. It says, which protective factors are most important? They say research has shown that the following protective factors are linked to a lower incidence of child abuse and neglect. That is nurturing and attachment, knowledge of parenting and of child and youth development, also parental resilience and social connections, concrete support for parents, and we'll just read those. Very important. So interesting to take a look at this. Just being from the background that I come from, growing up in an abusive home, this stuff is all very interesting to me because I see where my parents, what happened, and where the walls were, keeping my parents and our family the way that it was, and why nothing was done, and why we didn't get any help, because the difference is night and day. It says nurturing and attachment. A child's early experience of being nurtured and developing a bond with a caring adult affects all aspects of behavior and development. When parents and children have strong, warm feelings for one another, children develop trust that their parents will provide what they need to thrive, including love, acceptance, positive guidance, and protection. Knowledge of parenting and of child and youth development. Discipline is both more effective and more nurturing when parents know how to set and enforce limits and encourage appropriate behaviors based on the child's age and level of development. Parents who understand how children grow and develop can provide an environment where children can live up to their potential. And child abuse and neglect are often associated with a lack of understanding of basic child development or an inability to put that knowledge into action. Timely mentoring, coaching, advice, and practice may be more useful to parents than information alone. So yeah, parents can just read a pamphlet all they want on how to properly parent and how to properly discipline, and how to set these limits and be consistent. But it'd be better to have someone coach and give some advice and mentor them, and practice doing it instead of just, trying to get somebody to understand something that they don't understand. Parental resilience. Resilience is the ability to handle everyday stressors and recover from occasional crises. Parents who are emotionally resilient have a positive attitude, creatively solve problems, effectively address challenges, and are less likely to direct anger and frustration at their children. In addition, these parents are aware of their own challenges, for example, those arising from inappropriate parenting they received as children, and accept help and or counseling when needed. So those parents who are willing to actually get the help, that's very much a positive plus, going for a parent who realizes that they are having problems and that they need to have somebody step in and, because they love their family so much that they don't want to hurt them. Now that's a real true parent, because no one's perfect. And no child's perfect, and no parent's perfect, and no relationship is perfect. But what's perfect is wanting the very best for your family, wanting the very best for your children, and being able to be strong enough to say, I need help. It takes a lot of courage and a lot of guts and a lot of strength to say, I need help. But it is the very best thing a person can do, because there's no shame in it. The shame lies with those who are so bullheaded and ignorant that they would not reach out for help and would rather kill their family or see their family murdered or murder their children or their wife, or husband. This is the sad part. It's the strong ones that are strong to reach out. And we need to reach the other ones. We need to make sure that whole set of people that would not reach out, get some help, because they are ultimately the ones that are hurting their children and are causing a lot of problems in their families, right? Social connections. Evidence links social isolation and perceived lack of support to child maltreatment. Trusted and caring family and friends provide emotional support to parents by offering encouragement and assistance in facing the daily challenges of raising a family. And supportive adults in the family and the community can model alternative parenting styles and can serve as resources for parents when they need help. That's important for parents to have support. You see so many people, we study the whole issue surrounding child abuse and child abuse prevention. And a lot of the cases that we see out there that are in the paper, horrific child abuse cases where the child's been murdered and killed at the hands of their parent or caregiver, a lot of these people are very young, 22, 25-year-old, not always males, sometimes females, And the whole issue is that these are very young people that are killing their children or their girlfriend's children or their boyfriend's children. And we will have to wonder, where's the support, and a lot of times there's substance abuse involved and criminal gang activity or whatever, It's absolutely horrible, and you have to think, where was this young person's mind when they were killing this child, and why wasn't there some support there, for the whole family involved? And it's because it's the whole broken family, and the whole society is broken. And so we really have to get on this and start, promoting actually and supporting groups who are making a difference out there, who are working with families, and especially young families who have children and then cannot cope, whether they have, like I said, mental issues, or maybe they were abused as children themselves, or maybe they have substance abuse problems, or they might have anger management problems, and especially young people. It's very, very hard for a young person these days to cope anyway. And so, you add a child into the mix that they did not want in the first place, and then you have a recipe for disaster. And so that's the sad part, right? Where's the support for those people? Why did they have to kill their child, and what was going through their mind when they did it? And a lot of times you think, how could somebody even do that to their child or to someone's child, anyone's child? They have to be something seriously wrong with their mind, something obviously not working properly, a whole lack, of human compassion and human empathy and the right to life just doesn't exist with these people. And so you have to think about what that person has gone through to cause them to be that way. What that 25-year-old person who killed their baby, what life did they have? What kind of a life did they have? We have to really go back and fix this mess that's been created for us. And it's not really our fault, but we have to fix it because these children out here deserve better. These children out here that are being abused right now deserve better. And the whole family deserves better. So that's why it's just such a huge issue that we, get something done for these kids. We cannot allow this to continue on. And for these parents out here who are really having a hard time, it's just so important, right? It says here, concrete supports for parents. Many factors beyond the parent-child relationship affect a family's ability to care for their children. Parents need basic resources such as food, clothing, housing, transportation, and access to essential services that address family-specific needs, such as child care and health care, to ensure the health and well-being of their children. And some families may also need support connecting to social services such as alcohol and drug treatment, domestic violence counseling, or public benefits. Providing or connecting families to the concrete supports that families need is critical. And these combined efforts help families cope with stress and prevent situations where maltreatment could occur. So that's just the whole issue, we have to make these changes, and that's why I like this article, and I really think it's great, and I hope everybody will take a look at it and on their own time, and read through it, and then pass it on to somebody else, especially a family who's having a hard time. It's so important that we look around in our own worlds to the people that are in our lives, and look around and see who these children in our lives, and these young people in our lives, and try to help them as much as we can, because that's the whole issue. This world it's always been a bad place, but the thing is we can change this, but it is going to take all of us to do it. It's going to take everyone's voice, and everyone's going to have to get involved in order to change these and make this world a better place for these children. They are our future, and they will be, coming along generation after generation to a world. What kind of a world are they going to be facing? When we can stand up now and get the ball rolling. See, I'm just so happy to be able to come in behind all these people that have been doing all this awesome work, and just bolster it up with one more person, one more voice, one more person to do the work. And I have some of my dear friends and advocates in the chat room here tonight. Hello, everybody. And it's awesome to be able to be a part of the change, right? The change for these children, that they need so badly, right? That's the whole issue. And so we all have to get involved one way or another, whether it's locally in your own communities, which would ultimately be the best, and within our own families. It has to start within our own homes and in our own schools, in our own communities, right? And then also, if you see a group somewhere else who's doing some good work, support them. They need funding to be able to do what they do. So that's the whole issue. And it's, $104 billion is spent annually trying to pick up the pieces because of child abuse, right? So that's a statistic I saw out there on quite a few number of websites. That's absolutely crazy when you think about it. I mean, I'd rather think we should spend $104 billion all at once to stop child abuse so that we don't have to continue to spend this $104 billion every single year to not really be able to help anybody. Like, what is going on with that? That's why this is such a serious issue, and it does need some serious attention, like now. Then the article goes on to talk about protective factors for strengthening families. And these protective factors are critical for all parents and caregivers, regardless of the child's age, sex, ethnicity, or racial heritage, economic status, special needs, or whether he or she is raised by a single, married, or divorced parent or other caregivers. All of these factors work together to reinforce each other. For example, parents are more likely to be resilient in times of stress when they have social connections and a strong attachment to their child. Protective factors can provide a helpful conceptual framework for guiding any provider's work with children and their families. And references, they go on to talk a list of references here that they used for that portion of this article, which were just on page 11. There's 86 pages. It says CDC's strategic direction for child maltreatment prevention. The protective factors described throughout this resource guide support safe, stable, and nurturing relationships between children and adults. And the SSNRs between children and their caregivers are the antithesis of maltreatment and other adverse exposures that occurred during childhood and compromise health over the lifespan. Healthy relationships are fundamental to the development of the brain and to children's physical, emotional, social, behavioral, and intellectual capacities. It says characteristics of healthy relationships. Now this is good to know. Safety, stability, and nurture. Safety refers to the extent to which a child is free from fear and secure from physical or psychological harm within his or her social and physical environment. And stability, this refers to the degree of predictability and consistency in a child's environment. Families that are stable and have regular routines provide children with the consistency needed to lessen the impact of stressful experiences. And nurture. Nurture refers to the extent to which a parent or caregiver is available and able to sensitively respond to and meet the needs of their child. And importance of social context. It says to promote the healthy relationships and prevent child maltreatment effectively, it is critical to address social determinants such as neighborhood economic distress, lack of social support, social norms and policies. Social contexts help to create and support these relationships and or child maltreatment. Understanding the role that these social factors play, as well as interventions that work to address them, may improve our ability to plan and implement effective prevention policies. And that's this whole issue, right? I mean, we know, that some of these neighborhoods, in the poorest of areas have a lot of problems, with crime and gang activity and drugs and whatnot. But it's not just those children who are at risk, really. I mean, any home can be abusive and anyone can be an abuser. And so, there's really not an argument regarding child abuse. I mean, child abuse happens in rich homes, it happens in middle-class homes, and it happens in poor homes. And some poor people raise totally healthy families and love their children. And so do some rich people, and so do some middle-class people. So it kind of doesn't really, it could have an effect if there's a lot of stress because of poverty and a lot of, issues surrounding being brought up in an area with a lot of poverty. But I grew up in an area with some poverty, and, nobody seemed to care about that. We just wanted our families to be happy, and, we just wanted our families to love us, and I grew up around a whole lot of abused kids, so I know, I know all about it. So promoting safe, stable, and nurturing relationships. Prevention strategy. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC, strategy to prevent child maltreatment is organized around 4 priorities. That's measuring impact, creating and evaluating new approaches to prevention, applying and adapting effective practices, and building community readiness. So, just, identifying it all and then evaluating it, measuring the impact, and then developing these programs, right? It says measuring impact, monitor fatal and non-fatal child maltreatment at national and state levels, develop and monitor specific, valid, and reliable measures of these relationships, child relationships, child-parent relationships, SSNRs, identify and quantify the social and economic burden of child maltreatment, and then the next part is the creating and evaluating new approaches to prevention, identify populations at risk, modifiable risk and protective factors, and the best times and settings for interventions, evaluate parenting-focused prevention strategies, and evaluate public and organizational policies for prevention. And this is the whole issue. If we can prevent it before it happens, that's the best case, right? Because we don't want these kids to be abused, right? We want to stop the abuse before it happens, and that's why I love primary prevention. We need secondary and tertiary prevention because obviously there's children out there who have been abused and will need help. But primary prevention being my favorite because it stops the abuse before it even happens, and that's what we want. We don't want any child to be abused. So we have about a minute left. So thanks everybody for being here. I really appreciate it. And I've got some great friends in the chat room, and I just appreciate you all coming by and just love you all so much. And make sure you check out our website, Dreamcatchers for Abused Children. That's www.dreamcatchersforabusedchildren.com. Tomorrow night will be Donna Shear and myself on Dreamcatchers Talk Radio here at Blog Talk Radio, www.blogtalkradio.com/Dreamcatchers at 10 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I'll be back on my show tomorrow morning, One Child Abuse Survivor to Another, 6 o'clock in the morning on my show here. Just make sure you take care of yourselves and have a great night. And we'll be seeing you all around here again, I'm sure. And get the facts, get the information, learn the signs and symptoms of abuse and how to report it, and then do report it. Save a child's life. Have a great night, everybody, and we'll talk to you real soon. Bye-bye.